We're alive.
We're alive. Hey, I'm Julianna Ormond with Watchmen Action, and you are?
I'm Amania Saluste, City Talk Podcast. City Talk Podcast.
So we're here with you again with this week number 4.
Yes.
Yeah, week number 4, where we're coming to you live every Friday to talk about the shenanigans that are happening in our, with our government and whatnot, and how we feel about it. Because if we feel a certain way, I bet you there's a lot of you out there that feel a certain way also. We also want to be able to bring to you information that maybe you didn't think about or didn't know. Like we're going to talk about this executive order and how Trump was really able to get Doge, and the reason why the Democrats are very, very upset because of what he did and how he was able to do that. So we're going to go into that.
Yes. Yeah. So there is a lot going on in the news cycle. We're going to cover a lot of things, but yes, we really want to cover Doge and what's happening there with Elon Musk and our money, where our money's going. And, it's transparency is happening. Right? We're actually seeing it. And for whatever reason, the Democrats seems to be very, very upset about it. I mean, these people, it's like their hair is on fire, literally. And I'm just like, what is the problem? If we're being clued in as Americans, as taxpayers, we're being clued in with as to what our money's been doing. So why are you upset? You don't want us to be clued in? You don't want us to know what's going on? Elizabeth Warren?
Did you see Maxwell Frost at the Department of Education? And I was like, dude, get back to Orlando and do the things that you're supposed to be doing. Why are you up there now making a fuss up there?
Yeah.
Like all of a sudden now they're caring about what's happening. No, they're only caring about, as Maxine Waters said, well, what information do they have on us? And then followed up with, they may have our bank accounts. How are you a multimillionaire making $100 and something thousand a year? I want to know. Do you want to know?
I really want to know, because when we look at Maxine Waters, who has been in her seat, 30 years it's been? She went in as a young lady, and now Maxine is, what is she, 90? How old is Maxine Waters?
80 something, mid 80s, late 80s.
I mean, it really, really disgusts me when we look at this. These people go in their early 30s, 20s, whatever it is. I mean, let's talk about Joe Biden.
Yep.
He went in, he was in there for 50 years, 50, right? These people make this public service their career. And again, when our forefathers put this all together, it was for people to go in, maybe 1 term, 2 terms, solve a problem in your community or a problem that you saw around the country, and you solved it and you went home back to your job, back to your career, back to your business. They didn't make service their entire world, where they're spending 50 years in. And that's what Maxine Waters has done. Yep. And so they had a press conference yesterday, I think it was, where the new replacement of Maxine Waters, Maxine ain't going nowhere, but they brought in some new Maxine Crockett. What's her first name? I can't think of her name, but Crockett. She is she's just like Maxine Waters, except she's younger. And they talk the same rhetoric, again, low IQ, nothing good happening there. And these are the people that we see. They've got so much to hide, but they don't want we, the taxpayer, we, the people, their constituents, to know what they've been up to and how is it that they've gotten rich in the meantime. Maxine Waters is rich.
Yep. They're obviously not representing us, because if they were representing us, right, they'd be doing right by our society.
Yeah.
When you're looking at the middle class shrinking and shrinking and shrinking, and the poor becoming, more and more, and then the wealthy becoming mega wealthy, to the point where it's like, how much money do you really need? Like, how much money are you going to siphon out of our society and like put it in your, in your back pocket, or send it overseas to other people? Are we really, we've gotten to the point that, people can't even buy basic groceries and whatnot. We need to have a society that's able to sustain themselves.
Yeah.
How are we going to have, consumers if they're too broke?
Yeah. And I think about it now. So the The Congress, I think, same thing for the Senate as well. Their salary is $174,000 a year, right? That's the money that they make. And so we're in our community. We're gonna talk about the people in our community. So
Right.
Maxwell Frost, who was a Uber driver, ladies and gentlemen, not too long ago, before he got into office, that's what he was doing. He was Uber driving. And so now he is worth, I think about $1.5 million. Now, he's only been in office 3 years. So he went in for 2 and then he got reelected in this past November. So he's literally looking at 3 years from the time he got in office. So 3 years, $174,000. We're looking roughly $500,000 pretty much is what he should have accumulated. So how do you get, I'm trying to make it make sense for me. How do you get 3 years, $174,000 a year, and now you are $1.5 million worth? So somewhere along the line, some deals were made, some things happened. He sold us out. I don't know, to the lobbyists, to the Board of Ed, or to whomever, because right now he is worth 1.5 million. And if you question him on that, then guess what? You must be some sort of racist. You don't want the black man getting anywhere in life. You don't want the black man having any money. All I want to do is make the math make math. Let the math make math, or let the math make sense.
Exactly.
Where do you get, if your salary is $170,000 a year, 3 years in, how are you 1.5 million? That would mean you didn't even spend a penny of what you brought in. Like, help me make it make sense.
And we as watchmen, it's our responsibility, because once you hear my voice and I tell you something's going on, right, a negative, whatever it may be, it's your responsibility to go ahead and tell your brothers and sisters of what's going on. Everything that Amania is talking about, exactly, like, how can you make that kind of money? How can you do us dirty, right, and then be profiting yourself? At what point do we, the church, stand up and say, no? Like, I want to know, how are we going to get repaid for what USAID was doing? Right? They were acting independently. Who was overseeing what it was that they were doing? Right?
Yeah.
Some of the stuff maybe was good that they were doing, but our forefathers told us, they warned us, they said, do not get involved in international affairs. The only reason why you should be involved in anything is commerce. Are you selling something or you're buying something? Outside of that, good luck, country. Do what you got to do and stand on your own, because we're a constitutional republic and we're going to do what we need to do for ourselves. Excuse me. For ourselves, right? And now we're talking about, we're going to get Greenland, and we're going to go over and we're going to get Gaza. Whoa, hold on a second. Okay. Before we start doing all of those other things, can we clean up our own backyard? Am I wrong in thinking that?
Well, I wouldn't say you're necessarily wrong in thinking that. The way I'm seeing it, yes, our forefathers told us to, mind our business at points, but when we think about it, how did the United States become United States? We purchased other areas, we brought in other areas. And the way I see it at this point is that for a long time, we have not expanded our territory. We have not accumulated anything else like everything else. Yes, back in the day, the war happened and that's how people accumulated. But at this point, I would say, I think we are growing as our nation, and we're bringing more into the U.S. as a whole as part of the U.S. So growing our footprint and accumulating more land is the way I see it. Like we're growing the United States of America. We're bringing in more wealth, more land, more influence, if you will. And that's how I see it. Acquiring the Panama Canal and, what is that? Greenland, again, bringing in resources. We don't want our enemies having control of that, because China's upset right now because, Greenland decided, we're not going to let you do this with us anymore. So, I think the powerful country like the U.S. should be in play to be able to, if they're willing to sell, if they're willing to do that, I say, yeah, let the US be the one to control that, not somebody like China.
So it's also about being able to have independent thought, is that we can agree to disagree. So I'm just going to say this. RC and I have been writing a lot about the one world government, the one world, religion, and what they're trying to do, and the whole consolidation of power. So I don't see it as they're buying new land and, we're expanding. What I see is, the one world government, the one world religion happening. I'm seeing the Noahide laws being signed. I'm seeing the Abrahamic Accords happening. I'm seeing everything happening in the Middle East and whatnot, and Israel. I'm looking at my home territory and I'm going, what's going on over here? Like, we don't even have control over what's going on over here. Right. And we're going to leave it into like globalist hands. Yeah, we have President Trump that's now leading the charge and saying, hey, I want to own part of Gaza. We're going to invest in there. And I want to have Greenland. And let's talk about Canada and maybe even Mexico too. When I'm sitting here going, can we just talk about what's happening here? Can we fix here? You're talking about spending money and resources and time and efforts and focus on other areas where I'm looking at it going, hold on a second. I am 100% a constitutional republic person, 100%. And right now, we don't have a constitutional republic. We have an oligarchy. And now we've got a government that's looking at being able to go outside of our territory. We need to fix our territory, right? And we need to make sure that we have control over what's happening here. And the people that live, they're, indigent to that area, that they have control over their area too, that we're not coming in and go, okay, we're not going to say that you're the, what did Trump say? We're the 51st state. Canada's going to be in.
Well, they're going to make Canada a 51st state, and what's his name could just become governor.
Well, what I hear? I hear one world government. What I hear is dictatorship. What I hear is everything being consolidated. So that concerns me. That really, really concerns me. So.
Well, I would definitely agree with you on the point that we really need to fix our house. For sure. Like, we've got all kinds of problems here in this country. It's bad here. We've got a lot of bad stuff. Just being on the road here, we have homeless problem. We have camp problems. We have an immigration problem, a border problem. And I know that President Trump, they're in the process of fixing some of these things. And one of the things what I'm seeing in him fixing is these prosecutors. Let's talk about the crime and those problems here that needs to be fixed. So when I look at him, like with Pam Bondi, congratulations. Tulsi Gabbard, congratulations. RFK Jr., congratulations. Anybody else in that realm? No, that's it so far. Okay, so with Pam Bondi becoming the top cop and starting the process of putting forth these prosecutors that have not been doing their job, these George Soros put-ins that have been literally letting crime and decay take over our cities. So one of the problems in our house would be the crime, would be these things. These prosecutors not doing their jobs in doing that. And people are walking into Walmarts and walking out with carts of stuff, and nobody can tell me anything, and that mentality has emboldened crime in this country. And so putting in prosecutors who are going to deal with this and put people back in a different place where, you can't do that. You can't just go around shooting people. You can't have shootings every weekend in Chicago. You can't, these things need to be fixed in our house. So I think having a top cop like Pam Bondi now, who's going to bring that towards all the states and all the different prosecutors, I think that's going to help with what we're seeing with the decay of crime. So that's going to be one thing that we see taken care of in our house, because that is a critical thing to do to fix.
Yep. Very important that we're taking care of our backyard. So do we want to talk about Doge a little bit more?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So my degree is in forensic psychology. I went to John Jay College of Criminal Justice. So for me, I need to know the forensics, the points, right? So that I understand really what's going on behind the scenes. Forensics really means storytelling, right? You go into a crime scene, you see, different points and it tells you a story. The crime scene tells you a story. So Trump did something that was amazing, right? And this is the reason why I started following him in 2015 and 16. I said to my husband, Trump needs to run. And when he came down the escalator, I'm like, thank God. And my husband was like, what? Why would you say that? Like, he argued with me. And I'm like, because we need a business person in the office. He knew exactly what was going on behind the scenes because he was, rubbing elbows with all of them, right? Mm-hmm. He was a friend basically to everybody. Mm-hmm. So, I wanted him to go in there. So as he was campaigning, right, mm-hmm. I would say, okay, look, now he's going to this organization and to that organization and saying, what is your pain point? Mm-hmm. And what can I do to be able to help you? Who do I need to connect you with? Like, what do we need to do to make it better for this industry for you to be able to succeed? Mm-hmm. And I was watching how he was maneuvering, and it's really fascinating. So Trump did something and his people did something I thought was really, really cool. So I want to know, how has he been able to get away with Doge? And why is it that the left is so upset? You know why? Because he's got them handcuffed. Let me share with you what he did, right?
Good.
So under Obama, they had created a United States digital service, okay? And Trump, by executive order, took that, right? And he created the United States Doge service. So he just changed it. And what he did is, in his executive order, which was called Establishing and Implementing the President's Department of Government Efficiency, in Section 3, he reorganized and renamed it, right? Mm-hmm. It was already funded. Mm-hmm. It was already there. Congress couldn't do anything. They couldn't take the money out, right? So he literally said, here's a loophole. I found this loophole. Let me go right in there and I can start using this legislation amendment, whatever it was, to be able to say, okay, now we've got Doge and now we can go in there and we can start looking at what's going on. Mm-hmm. Let's open up the books, right? Mm-hmm. So now I want to know. So it's great that we're watching how they're maneuvering. It's good that we're seeing it under Trump. Having said that, it's bad because they're doing this manipulation behind the scenes all the time. Mm-hmm. So I just want to say, I want to clean all this up. Like, mm-hmm. we need to roll back all the federal overreach, right? To get back to the basics so that they can't play this kind of shenanigans. Wow. So I hope that with what Trump is doing, that he gives us the ability to really pull back the federal government, because he said that he was going to do that. He's pulling back all the monies that had been, going out the door, right? And I'm hoping that he's going to start throwing that responsibility back to the states, throwing the money back to the states and saying, states, you can take care of education better than we, the federal government, can. You mm-hmm. can take care of what's happening locally better than, we at the federal level can, which is the way it's supposed to be, right? Because mm-hmm. they're not supposed to be doing anything outside of what was directly assigned to them. Well, you know what? Through all the shenanigans of what they've been doing, we've allowed them to expand their ability mm-hmm. to do what they've done. Mm-hmm. And now that we're looking at it and we understand what they've done, we, the people, need to say, we need to pull you guys back. And I hope Trump just keeps going. We're working you guys out of a job. We're looking to close this thing over here. We're looking to be able to fix this thing over there, because we need to go into our government forensically and say, we need to clean this up. Yeah. Right? Mm-hmm. At what point do we have an opportunity at this moment? I keep telling people, Trump is standing with us on one side, we the people on one side, and the globalists on the other. Okay. Yeah. We need to make sure that our voice is super loud. We need to make sure that he knows that what we want to have happen and what we don't want to have happen. For example, we're in a 15-minute city. Okay. I don't consent to what's happening here. I know that Trump needs to know the fact that I don't consent to what's happening here, because this is my local government. My local government should be doing what it is that I called them to do, right? Mm-hmm. Not that it comes from a federal mandate or the globalist agenda and it's pushed upon us. And that's what we're looking at. And I'm like, no, I really hope that Trump came in and he's going to go, you know what? We're putting up this barrier between what the federal government has been doing to what the states and what we the people need to be doing. But mm-hmm. it means that we the people have to stand up. Yeah. It can't just be an Amania and I having this conversation. It needs to be so many different just Joe Blows turning on the camera, looking at the camera and going, I have a voice and I'm going to say something, because if we're not speaking up, the globalists are speaking up. Yeah. Right?
Yeah. Absolutely right. Doge.
Yeah.
And I'm surprised to know that. I didn't even know that that was, something that they pulled up. And that's probably one of the reasons the left didn't have a lot to say, because they realized that they had no leg to stand on, because this was just a brilliant move on Trump's part to just utilize what's already there. No need to make up anything new. The stuff is already there.
That's right.
And so I wonder what other programs is currently there that we're not utilizing, because again, we have laws on the books. We don't need new laws to fix the border. We already have laws on the books to fix the border. It just has to be implemented, right? And they say, oh, we need this bill, we need that. No, we already have American laws on the books that say if you come into this country illegally, therefore you are criminal. I mean, it's not rocket science. So let's touch base on that for just a second. When we look at what's happening with the border czar, and all of these things, I was watching. I'm a person who keeps up with like Eric Adams and what goes on in New York City, because that's home,
Right.
That's home. So I like to know what's happening out that way. Well, Eric Adams, during this whole thing, during the Biden administration, he pushed back, and he talked about these things. He says, this is a problem. We've got an issue. And really what he wanted more than anything was more money from the government. He wanted money from Biden, and he was talking about what was happening, and they didn't like that. And before you know it, he had charges on him. Not saying he's not guilty of these things or anything like that, but I believe if he wasn't very vocal about what he was saying about these illegals and, the situation, those problems would have never come to his doorstep. But in any event, in the last week, news has taken place that the Trump administration has put these charges to the side. So he's no longer facing federal prison and all of that. And so, and him and Tom Homan, the border czar, had meetings over this week. And so Adams is in a very, very interesting place, because Pam Bondi, the whip at this point, is suing New York City, or the state of New York, because of their sanctuary status. And so they're serious, and they're suing the governor, Kathy Hochul, for letting her city or letting her state become what it is. And they're also suing Big Tish James, Letitia James. She's also being sued, and so is the commissioner of motor vehicles in the state. I guess because they're giving out IDs and things like that to so anyway, everybody's being sued, but Eric Adams is not. And so this morning, Eric, they were on television talking about, well, what they're going to do with Eric Adams. This is, Kathy Hochul and all of them, stating that, because it appears that Eric Adams is trying to work with the Trump administration, that's a big no-no for them. And so, but Eric Adams is now asking what my point, to go through all that, my point of this is that Eric Adams, the money that was coming to him, he had $80 million that the Biden administration had already sent out to them to take care of, migrants and so on. Well, when Doge got in, Doge shut it down. And so that $80 million they no longer have. And so Eric Adams is now, well, where's the money? Who needs the money? And the administration is like, you ain't getting no money. It's over. We're not spending not one more red cent on this project of housing, feeding, taking care of illegal migrants. We're not doing that anymore. And so poor Eric Adams, he has no place to go now, because the Democrats are against him. And right now the Trump administration aren't happy with him, because now he's making noise that, well, the government has taken away the money. We don't have any money. Yeah. So poor Eric Adams. And then he's up for re-election. So he needs to make some hardcore decisions. Am I going to be 100% Democrat far left like the rest of them? or am I going to get on the MAGA train and make this thing happen and get reelected? So
what do you think is going to happen?
I think he's going to get on the Trump train.
So you think he's going to jump ship from the Democrat?
I think so. I think he's more of a moderate. He's not. There's some things, yeah, obviously, you know, giving the illegals food stamp cards and giving them credit cards and all of that, putting up a note. All this stuff is far left, but he's always argued that these rules is just no good for the city. He's always stood that. And so I really think that they are the ones who's completely gone off the deep end, and Eric Adam is just kind of, you know, sort of in the middle there, you know, and even speaking up about it shows you, okay, he's not as far left as the rest of them, but maybe again he saw the writing on the wall and he realized what was going to happen, and he was like, let me get myself in order before this Trump administration gets in. And now, you know, he has some choice. He has a choice to make. It's either he's gonna continue with the lunacy with the far left, or he's going to move towards the center, towards the middle, towards the right, and, you know, do good for his city and his people. I mean, this guy used to be a cop, right?
So RC and I are going to be up in New York City. We're going to be doing speaking at two conferences, because New York City is really pushing back. They are not having what's happening over there. So I'm really excited to see what happens in New York, because I think that everyone's watching what happens, because, you know, us New Yorkers are everywhere, especially in Florida and whatnot. So it's like one of those, wait a minute, you're really destroying our city. So what's going to happen next?
Yeah.
Speaking of RC, should we bring him on so he could talk about the couple of articles that he spoke on?
Yes.
RC?
We'll bring RC on. Will you give the introductions?
My awesome husband, RC Williams.
Ladies, thanks for having me on.
Thank you. Thank you for being on.
Yeah.
Where you want to start?
I want to talk about cultural Christianity and what's going on with Acts. Is it 17?
Acts 17. And, you know, just reading of that, it's actually like Acts from the Bible. Like they sort of implemented the two of them together to like bring you Acts 17. I read that in that article. But RC, you know all about it. You can tell us.
Yeah, this is a story that we filed at Ripped from the Headlines, and also we'll talk about this Sunday night on the Culture Crossroads, the TV show that Julianna and I co-host. So there was a piece in the New York Times this week entitled "Searching for God or Peter Thiel." And so the basis of this is that Peter Thiel's claim is that he is a Christian. Now, he is also a homosexual, but he is a professing Christian and believes in Jesus in whatever form that he does. So this story centers around kind of this Gnostic cult. So this weird cultish type of Christianity offshoot that's just full of garbage. And basically, in short, you are a god, and there is maybe a need for God or maybe not. And Jesus is my buddy in the back seat, and you know, he's got great principles. Maybe I should live by, and that's it. So the story starts with Peter Thiel speaking at another billionaire friend's birthday party in New Mexico back in 2019, and it forwards to a group that is called Acts 17. Now, they've used this as an acronym, basically, Silicon Valley and technology and whatever else they're doing, and they're invoking God, supposedly. The challenge is, and our co-host Andrew Southwick brought this up, and we'll bring it up again Sunday on the show, is that he actually took clips from Peter Thiel talking about quote unquote Christianity, and Peter Thiel's theology is so far off the mark that it's laughable. And that's unfortunate, because, you know, we want to win souls to the kingdom. And as Julianna and I have said on the Watchmen brief, when we talked about what happened at St. John's Episcopal Church when quote unquote Bishop Bud had Donald Trump and his family in the audience, and she was talking about mercy and that there needed to be affirmation. Well, here's the challenge: is sin cannot operate in the ecclesia, in the church. So let me clarify what I mean. I did not say, and I continue to hold the position that I do not say that sinners aren't welcome in the church. That's the entire point. But you can't affirm sin in the church. That doesn't make any sense. Sinners come looking for a savior. And so you go to church, then the sin has to stop. You can't live in sin and be in the church. And in essence, what Peter Thiel is what's being translated in that article in the New York Times is that Peter Thiel has basically doubled down and said, well, look, I'm homosexual and I'm a professing Christian, and it's okay. It is okay to live in and perpetuate sin. And this is part of the challenge, ladies, is that in Silicon Valley, the streets are apparently all lined with milk and honey. I worked in the Silicon Valley for many years, and people live in a bubble. But you can see that the people that gravitate to this are millionaires and billionaires. And in short, they are the modern epitome of what we would consider Gnosticism or fake Christianity, where the very core of it is you are God and you are in control, and the actual God and Jesus are nice to have around.
That is some of the scariest things I think I've ever heard, because they're the leading voice. People are listening to and then parroting, right, what's being said by these, very affluential, influential people. Instead of the church and the pulpit, we've kind of rescinded our pulpit and given our authority over to technocrats, in essence, is what you're saying, right?
Yeah, Juliana. So what's scary here is there's an extension of this, right? And we talk often about the reason that any of this is happening is because the ecclesia, the church, has abdicated its role of leadership in the culture. People will always throw up their hands and say, I can't believe this is happening with Peter Thiel, or I can't believe this is happening in my government, or I can't believe this is happening in my community. What's wrong with these politicians? There's nothing wrong with them. They are doing exactly what they are capable of doing. Being honest as a believer, the fault lies with you and me. You want to see the problem, look in the mirror. When we abdicate our role of leadership in the culture, the moral compass disappears, and all that's left is decay and evil and all of those things. That is why those who are most capable run away from public service. And what do they always say? I'm not getting anywhere near that mess. It's going to be a time suck for me. It's going to suck my energy. These people don't want to get anything done anyway. I hope the whole thing falls apart. It ultimately falls to us when we see stories like this.
So we know that the government is not going to help, size it down. And we need to be saying, hey, this is what we're looking for. Term limits being one of them, because they're not going to make themselves, have term limits, obviously.
Right.
But you also talked about another article talking about Elizabeth Warren. So let's talk about her for a little bit.
Yeah. So CNBC ran a story where there is concern around the cuts at the FDIC. So, ladies, you were talking about Doge earlier, and Elon Musk is going in with a weed whacker and a hatchet and just knocking it out. Well, apparently they want to eliminate 200 roles that they were going to hire for at the FDIC. And Elizabeth Warren flipped out and said, well, wait a minute, is this going to put us in danger of the big banks having problems or doing whatever they want? So here's the challenge, is that the FDIC was basically useless anyway. Most people don't realize this. But where that got exposed is when Silicon Valley Bank crashed in 2023. Now, we covered this extensively, ripped from the headlines. We are the Watchmen. Like, we were right on top of it, watching this thing happen in almost real time and saying, look, here's what it means for you. Here's what's going on. Here's what we discovered. The FDIC's job is to ensure each of your accounts up to $250,000 in the event of a loss. What we figured out is that the FDIC at the time of Silicon Valley Bank's crash could only cover about 1.37% of all deposits on account. So what that would mean is that if the three of us and 80 other people all ran on the bank at the same time, about 1% of us would actually be able to get some type of recoup on our money. So the FDIC gets caught with their pants down. Well, people say, well, that's a shame for the FDIC. I said, well, sure, except for the part where when Silicon Valley Bank crashed, the FDIC had about 125 billion in reserve to cover losses, and 25 billion of it went away. So at this point, if something happened, they'd only be able to cover about 0.6% of all deposits on account in the event of a bank failure. But where does this ultimately lie? It ultimately lies back in the lap of Elizabeth Warren. I will quickly explain why. In setting regulations for the banks, one of the things that happened in 2020 is the reserve rate that banks needed to have. Banks are supposed to have a reserve on hand. Normally, what happens, you go to the bank, you put in $100, they'll leave 10 of it or 20 of it in the bank, and then they'll loan out the other 80. That's how banks make money. Well, the government in 2020 decided that the reserve requirement needed to be zero. So none of your money's in the bank, right? That is a function of government. So Elizabeth question is asking a question that she already knows the answer to, because she's one of the people that's at fault. Ladies, people need to clearly understand. They need to clearly understand what's going on and where the fault lies. Because if not, the economy, it doesn't matter if President Trump is in, the economy is going to go off the rails and over a cliff.
So, RC, I was just thinking, so was this something that they voted on and Elizabeth Warren voted for the zero
No money
thing
in the
that
bank?
no money in the bank? She voted for that, knowing that this would cause what she's now advocating for. Is that right?
So it's not something that gets voted on per se, but there are oversight committees that deal with this. And they said, well, look, banking regulation wise, we don't really need to have it. And that actually came from Biden's office, by the way. It's like, hey, reserve requirement zero, everybody's good here. Go for it, right? And when the banks see that, what they instantly think is it's okay to do whatever we want, right? Inherent danger, right? Danger, Will Robinson, danger. Dangerous standard, but now the chickens come home to roost. And it's the funny irony to me that Elizabeth Warren would be one with the line of questioning when she's one of the people that's guilty of letting it happen in the first place.
See, that's what I don't understand about all of these people. When it's convenient for them, and we're talking about Elizabeth Warren, this woman who's made nearly $2 million that she's been paid from big pharma, and she comes out here hooting, hollering, about trying to protect the American people. Like, from what you're telling me right now, she wasn't protecting the American people then, because doing this ensure that the little money that we, the people, have in the bank, the big banks can do whatever they want to. And it's now she wants to, crocodile tears because you care for the people. And so when people like her and Warnock comes out in support of this, my tentacles go up, my spideys go up. I'm just like, this can't be good for we the people if they're out here advocating for it.
Amania, you make a great point. We wrote on this extensively with Rip from the Headlines. It's SherlockExposes.com. It's Sherlock is without a K. We wrote on this extensively and where the fault lied and how these things actually ended up happening. We've been on a number of other shows talking about this too. Here in Orlando, we're on the American Adversaries regularly. And Chris Hart, the team on that show, they were one of the first to have us on when Silicon Valley Bank happened. And we connected all the dots back to ultimately where something like this started. Interesting connection, by the way. The reason that there was a run on Silicon Valley Bank in the first place is that, of all people, Peter Thiel got wind that Silicon Valley Bank was having problems. He started calling his rich friends Wednesday of that week, telling them to get their money out. And by Friday, the government had seized Silicon Valley Bank. So I don't want to go too far off track, but this is relative, okay? We're talking about the public servant side of government. These guys aren't doing their job. They're in the bag for big pharma and stuff like that. So you would think that private citizens being involved in the process would be a good thing. Now, I am not a fan of Elon Musk per se. There are some weird things that he does that don't sit well with me. I will say this as we call balls and strikes. One of the things you do want to see is a private citizen who wants to know where their money's going. So in that light, with what he's doing with Doge, is he's just ripped the Band-Aid off. And he said, look, let's look at where the money's going. Simple question. The public deserves to know. I will give him credit for that. What is interesting, though, is that you end up on the flip side with a guy like Peter Thiel, who is the co-founder of Palantir. Palantir, their biggest client's the CIA. They specialize in data analysis, tracking, and surveillance on you. Okay, that is where they make their money. They service all the big agencies. You start to ask yourself now, where is he? And by he, I mean Peter Thiel. Where is he on the influence of government or what the impact is going to be? Well, I can tell you in his own words. He has said in his own books that competition is silly. That's for suckers. He wants a monopoly and wants control because ultimately his goal is technocracy. You see, these guys that come from the PayPal mafia, which Elon Musk was a part of, which makes it difficult to be 100% in the bag for him. And by the way, you shouldn't do that for anybody. But when you look at where the PayPal mafia came from, David Sachs has an outsized influence on Trump's administration. Peter Thiel has much the same, right? And the reason that J.D. Vance is in place is because he was the deal for Trump to get the money from the tech bros. Now, I know I'm going to tick some people off. And listen, welcome to the research business. We call balls and strikes here. The reason J.D. Vance is there is because he was the compromise. And after that happened, a ton of money started coming in from the Silicon Valley tech bros, who first were liberals, then they were libertarians, then they kind of became conservatives and Republicans, and now they're MAGA. It's like the Homer Simpson meme where he goes in the bush and he comes out as something else. That's kind of where we're at in the story right now. And I apologize for getting on my soapbox, but this is real.
So can you connect all of that to the potential of CBDC, the revaluing of gold, future of the dollar, and how we're fighting with BRICS?
Sure. So let me start with CBDCs, central bank digital currencies, and centralized cryptos. CJ Constantinos was actually on the Watchmen brief this week, and he's doing some great stuff with Bitcoin. But he gave a great analysis because we posed the question about decentralized cryptocurrency versus centralized. And what he basically said was that the challenge with centralized cryptocurrency is that it is created out of thin air. You just type it on a computer and someone controls all of it, and then they decide how it gets disseminated. Bitcoin was very different. There was a limited amount and there was a fair start. Everybody had the same opportunity to get Bitcoin at the same time. And that system has been tried and tested, which is why Bitcoin is over $100,000 a piece. And then you have these others out there, in particular, Ripple and XRP, who fought with the government for years and eventually won their case. They wanted to be the centralized, basically government cryptocurrency. Anytime something like that is centralized, it is inherently dangerous because it takes you down a road where the government can control your behavior, right? So if they decide in a world where you don't have any options, you can't have cash, you can't have gold, you can't have silver, the only thing that's accepted is a central bank digital currency. Let's call it US coin, whatever, just hypothetically speaking. Well, they decide that they're going to put on travel restrictions. Amania wants to go to New York to see her family. She can't travel outside of her neighborhood because her money won't work, right? Or if they decide you can't go out on Tuesday, won't work, or you can't shop today. They have a level of control. This is why a centralized digital currency or a central bank digital currency is inherently dangerous. And legislation has been signed in the state of Florida. Ron DeSantis has said no CBDC is allowed. It's like, great, but what are you going to do about the token that's going to come in and kind of be the government standard? So Juliana, that's part one. Part two, let's get into what you were talking about with gold and the revaluation potentially of the US dollar. So this is moving around in a number of circles, and this story originates from gold brokers in London having a problem. People were making margin calls. Basically, they wanted physical delivery of the gold that they apparently had vaulted with these brokers. Well, the challenge was they didn't have it. Does this sound familiar? Oh, yeah, I got your money. I got your money. Yeah, just keep it with us. We'll pay you a little bit more if you lease it to us. And then all of a sudden, when you want physical delivery, it ain't happening, right? So this is causing a bit of a ruckus and a problem. Well, what's happening underneath that is that a bunch of gold is coming back into the United States. This comes on the heels of central banks around the world, in particular China, buying up a ton of gold, right? So now there's a bunch of gold flowing back into the United States. There has been talk, because the US Treasury Secretary has brought this up, that they need to do an audit to figure out how much gold is there. Now, Doug Casey has talked about this. Mike Adams, the health ranger, talked about this on his show the other day, that what could potentially be happening here. This is not investment advice, nor is this this is actually going to happen. So please take a look for yourself, do your own research. That's really important. The belief is that there could potentially be a revaluation of gold, okay, and then a reset of the US dollar with some tie back to gold. Wow, right? It's like the reverse of 1971 when Nixon took us off the gold standard. In some way, the Trump administration would theoretically put us back onto the gold standard. Well, if that happens, gold could theoretically go to $10,000 an ounce. Again, not investment advice. We're not doing a financial forecast here. But the price of gold would spike. The challenge is that everybody that's been in funny money, and we've talked about this on our shows and on our publications and everything, stock market fake and inflated, right? All this stuff is fake and inflated. If people don't realize that now, I don't know what to tell you. It's true, right? So what would happen then, all the pension funds, anybody who is overloaded or leading with their chin in the stock market is going to get completely wiped out in a scenario like this. Long term, yeah, it's like having the flu. And look, the only way you get over it is to throw up and sweat it out, right? But in the short term, and for people who have less time left, it's going to be painful if something like that were to happen. But it feels like there's something to it, and here's why. You'll notice right now that President Trump is doing reciprocal tariffs. So in part, what Mike Adams and Doug Casey and some of these other guys believe is happening is that Trump is using tariffs to bring these countries into line for what he wants to do with the dollar. And behind the scenes, the conversation he's having is, look, if you fall in line with this and basically let us take your assets and turn them into liquid, so to speak, your gold or whatever else, we'll go easy on you and the tariffs will go away, right? But publicly, he is applying pressure, which by all accounts appears to be a direct shot across the bow at the BRICS nations, that they are not in charge. In essence, the United States is the hegemony. Now, I'll stop and I'll end with this. That, believe it or not, through all of this could theoretically be possible if the oil range in Alaska could actually be accessed, right? There's been a bunch of environmental stuff around why they couldn't do that. If that were to actually open up, the United States would be a dominant energy power overnight. So there are still moving parts here. We're not 100% sure exactly what Trump's going to do, but there's some weird indicators and things going on right now. And while the retail market, that's you and I, the average folks, don't seem to be too spooked yet, if you want to know what's going to happen, figure out where the big money is going. If central banks are double, tripling, and quadrupling down on gold purchases, that should probably tell you something. What do they know that you don't, and what's coming?
So we were in Tallahassee helping Daniel Diaz with Sound Money Act, trying to advocate for wanting to have our own gold-backed currency here in Florida and elsewhere, other states, right? And then we've got Jeremy with goldback.com and what he's doing. How does what Daniel's doing and what Jeremy's doing impact everything that we're talking about?
Yeah, so a quick breakdown on that. Citizens for Sound Money. Daniel Diaz is the executive director of that organization. Daniel's also a friend of ours. Very sharp guy. So the logic comes from a book by Kevin Freeman, who's based in Dallas, called Pirate Money. What he discovered is that in the U.S. Constitution, states are allowed to mint their own currency as long as it's gold and silver. So the Sound Money Act in 2024 was designed to make gold and silver legal tender in the state of Florida and remove the tax implications, because there's a penalty if you buy under a certain amount of gold and silver, you got to pay a tax on it. So they wanted to get rid of the tax, make it fractional and transactional, so you could take a debit card and pay with gold or pay with silver, right? And that the state would have its own depository where they were the custodian. They couldn't loan it out, they couldn't leverage it. All they could do was hold it on your behalf. And then if you showed back up with your card at the state depository, they would give you your gold back. Okay? Makes sense. Obviously, it died on the vine because Senate President Kathleen Passidomo and others wanted that bill killed because it would hurt big banks. Now it's coming around again in 2025, and we will probably get some version of it through the Florida legislature in this cycle. In contrast, what Jeremy Cordone with Goldback is doing is he's basically turned gold into money. He's created these great notes. I think they're at 7 states now because Florida just launched. So basically, if you had one Goldback, it's like 1/1000th of an ounce of gold, right? And if somebody's willing to accept that for payment, you could do it. It is not legal tender, but it is specie. So it could be exchanged for goods or services if both parties are willing to do that. What's exciting about that is that Jeremy and his team have actually made gold fungible, because as it stands right now, if you're a gold stacker, that's great. But how do you theoretically spend that if you need to? Are you going to shave it off or whatever, right? I made the comment today to someone. I said, it is interesting that the gold bugs and preppers and folks who have been in this game a long time who say margins are for suckers and this and all that. The exact thing they've been preparing for, they have no idea how it would tangibly work, because they're preparing for either a grid down, a nuclear attack, an EMP, government going sideways, and all economies becoming local. The very thing that they're preparing for, in theory, in real life, they have no idea how it would work, right? Because how does an economy locally function if one person's got a bunch of gold bars, right? And I've told people this who are wealthy, I'm like, if you have a lot of gold, that's great. Then you are basically saying that you're going to be the bank for your community because you got all this gold. Even then, you still have to have a way to fractionalize it and make it tangible for people to use. So you can either be the benevolent leader or you can have your head on a stick, because they're going to kill you. Okay, just being real. Right? In a grid down situation, they know you're rich and they know you got resources. Guess what? So you can either help that community or they're coming for you. And what Goldback and Jeremy and his team have proposed is that there is a tangible way for us to do this right now. And people can do it as collector's items. What we'd love to see is for this to be a very active part of the parallel economy. So Julianna, there are good things going on with gold and silver, precious metals right now. What us on this show and others who do the same thing, what we have to get really good at is helping people to design their parallel economies and helping them understand where precious metals actually fit and how to use them when the rubber meets the road.
Awesome. So if you can give us a 30-second, the giveaway with goldback.com and what we're doing, as I'm showing our audience.
Those are awesome.
A picture of a Goldback, right? Okay, so talk about the giveaway.
Yeah, so this is exciting. In the state of Florida, the Goldback team is doing a free half Goldback giveaway. So they have sponsored Watchmen Action to help out our ministry. Here's the deal. If you go to watchmenaction.org and you scroll down the page a bit, you'll see a big button that says, give me my free gold. If you click on that and fill out the form, let them know Watchmen Action sent you, they will send you a free half Goldback in the mail. Now, if you have questions on buying Goldbacks or how you can support Watchmen Action with doing that, just send us a note from the website and we'll help you to get set up to do that. It's a great way to support us. It's a great way to build your parallel economy. And it's a great way to look at the future in a tangible way, as we've seen in the movie Homestead and the TV show. Goldbacks are actually being used in real life. And we tell people that's not a fantasy. That's a how-to manual for when things go sideways.
That is awesome. Wow. RC, thank you so much for joining us, because you just a wealth of information. Appreciate it.
Thank you, RC.
Bye, guys. Take care.
Wow. RC is like a computer. My head was spinning. There was so much. I was like, oh man, I can't keep up. But he has so much information. Wow.
What questions? Like, how do you feel about everything that he said, outside of like, oh my God, it's like a little overwhelming?
Yeah. Well, I'm interested to see how all of this works out with the Goldbacks, with gold, what's coming. What happens with the Trump administration with them trying to bring gold back here. Like he said, one point he made, and I thought that was interesting, that this is when Nixon sort of gave it away, and now Trump is sort of bringing it back, just like Carter gave away the Panama Canal, and now Trump is trying to get it back. So it's like so many. He's trying to fix issues that previous presidents did in this country, just like this gold. And so I'm kind of curious to see how it go. I mean, it's going to happen. And like RC said, nobody here is, financial advisors, but if you're paying attention, then you'll know. If you dabble in the stocks, then you'll know what to do.
So that was a lot of information.
Yeah.
And guess we'll wind down from there, huh?
Yeah, I think so. Let me look at this.
Isn't that cool?
Isn't that cool? Look at that.
So,
Florida goldbacks. This is like this is a $1.
So can you imagine, like, our wallets have a whole bunch of those in different denominations, and that we can now use that instead of cash or whatever, right? We can now use gold. But, RC brought up a point that was really important. That is having a parallel economy, right? And everything as far as a parallel economy is concerned needs to be hyper-local, right? You need to know if everything goes crazy, we lose the electricity and whatnot, right? You need to know who's got the chickens, who's got the pigs, who's got the farms, right?
Right.
Who's going to do what to make sure that the community continues to move forward, because we're going to have to, right? How are we going to be doing commerce if we don't have a means of exchange? And that's the reason why I'm all like anti-CBDC or XRP or anything that's not father's money. This is father's money. Right?
Gold. Yeah,
Gold.
it's true.
Gold.
Yeah, I mean, for a long time, the dollar has been weak. Gold and silver is literally God's money. That's how commerce started. That's how wealth started. Gold, silver, and that's how it's going to continue to be. The dollar is paper. It's just, Joe Biden, he printed up a whole bunch of it. That's why we're in this location that we're in right now. Is because they just go into this machine and they print more money and they print more money and they print more money and nothing's backing it, right? It's just paper. It's just paper.
It's just paper.
It's just paper.
I actually helped launch 2 trade and barter companies. Most people don't even know what trade and barter is unless you're really in it. But it's just another currency. Like literally, if you have trade and barter monies inside of your account, you have to tell the IRS at the end of the year that you've got that. But the good thing about the trade and barter money is that it's backed by the goods and services of people that are part of the trade and barter unit. And I just think that we all need to have different currencies. You can have different, country currencies in your pocket. You can have gold and silver in your pocket. You can have a Rolex watch and bullets, right? Because at the end of the day, all of that is going to be currency that we can use as a means of exchange. So.
Yeah. And you're right. Like, Bitcoin and all of these things, NFTs, all of these are different, currencies. They really are. It's all what somebody's willing to pay for whatever, and it's the bartering system. That's where we're at. So there's a lot of ways to maneuver wealth to be able to grow in these economies. So it doesn't have to depend on the dollar alone. Again, like we just talked about it, it's just paper. They're just printing it a whole lot. It's just paper.
Wait till Doge gets into the Federal Reserves and audits them. That's what I want to see. You think that they're having a hissy fit now?
Watch what happens, huh?
They need to. They need to do that. They need to do that with the military, also the Pentagon. Like everybody needs to be audited. Yeah. I want to see where my money has gone, is going, and what they're doing. Okay. Yeah. And I know that there's not a single American out there that doesn't want to know what is going on with our country. Yeah. Let's fix our country. We have this opportunity right now to be able to do that, but we, the people, need to stand up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's the reason why RC and I wrote the workbook, Watchmen Action, Empowered to Act. Okay, we're doing our first training in Sarasota. I'm so excited.
Oh, wonderful.
In March. So in a few weeks, we're going to be doing it. We're getting together about 50 different activists, and we're going to do a condensed version. This is the express pack that I've got in my hands. I have a full version. But we're going to start, doing what it is that we can do. If I've got a workbook and I say that I can help you build an advocacy plan around core issues, again, an advocacy plan around core issues, and you can move that core issue forward the way that you want to see it happen, talk to me. I want to be able to come in and be able to have conversations with the right people, do the workbook, and get you guys moving to do what it is that you're capable of doing. I keep saying we don't need the government. We need people that are organized and doing the things that we're capable of doing on our own.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we need to do is make sure the government is doing what they need to do. Oh, by the way,
Yes.
I keep hearing the J6ers that are getting out, that have gotten out, they're like, we need to start running
For
for
office.
office.
Oh, why not?
Yep.
Oh, why not?
I'm very excited about that.
Because they're the ones who has been persecuted all of these years. Next week, I'm interviewing one of the J6ers and his wife.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's going to be a great conversation. And if you remember, his wife Brittany was at FRA, and she talked about her husband
That's right. I
being
remember.
locked away. And so, yeah, so I'm going to be interviewing her and her husband, who was recently released. And so, yeah, I say do it, because these are the people who went and exercised their freedoms in their own, in the capital of their country. And these people were locked away for no reason. And then they used and this is one of the reasons I'm pumped. Kash Patel has not been confirmed yet. He's the last one right now. So I am all on, because the FBI did the people dirty. Did January 6ers dirty. They did everybody. They harassed, moms at school boards, grandmas at school boards. Your friend Beverlyn. Beverlyn. People like her. Beverlyn B.D. Williams. People like her, January 6th, all of these people were persecuted by the FBI. And I, for one, don't care if the FBI goes away, because it's not something that was really entrenched in our Constitution or anything like that. It came about during what year? What day was, I forget. I don't remember. But anyway, it was not something that was consequential or needed. So it can go away. We can figure it out. So I'm all for that.
Amen. So on Watchmen Weekly, we actually interview the presidential candidate, Randall Terry, and the vice presidential candidate, Pastor Stephen Broden, right? And we talked about, they have a method. So about how we can be able to market better for our candidates. So we're going to be talking about, we'll unpack that next week.
Okay.
But, we unpack the ability to take these J6ers, get them strategically aligned where we need them throughout the United States to run, and let's start taking back our country one seat at a time. Let's empower what's happening now today with Trump and everything. Let's make sure our voices are super loud so that Trump knows which direction he needs to be going in, which is, yay America, and not the globalist direction. So I'm very excited.
I will say, I don't know if you heard, but yesterday, Senator Geraldine Thompson, she passed away. So condolences to her and her family. She went in for knee surgery, I believe, and she just did not make it out. So praying that, she has been received by the Lord. And, again, our condolences to her family. And Miss Geraldine Thompson's seat is this. She's a senator. I forget what number it is, but it's already been said there will be a special election.
Well, let's see what happens.
There will be a special election.
I'm
this
hoping
is our area.
I'm hoping the Constitution Party really, really stands up. They are just trying to destroy the Democrats. They're not trying to hurt the Republicans at all. And Pastor Broden is African-American, so he's saying, Black community, you need to step up. And Randall Terry is a Catholic, and he's saying, you need to step up. Both of them are pro-lifers, and they're saying, if you vote for the D's, you are voting to kill Jesus in the womb. And I'm like, woo! So we've got a plan brewing in the background so that we can take back our country. So we love you. Visit watchmenaction.org to see everything that we're doing, to read our articles, to learn more about the workbook. And
well, you can find me, Liberty Halls, putting on our 4th community conversation happening in February. Well, we are in February. It's happening February 26th. And it's a panel of wives talking to women about marriage, about being a woman, young girls, single ladies. It's all really encompassed about love and marriage and growing the family unit. And so it will be a great conversation. We're very, very excited for it. You can connect with me on Facebook if you'd like more information. We have our flyers and everything there. Also, libertyhalls.com is another place that you can find us. And you can also find me right here on YouTube at The Conservative Poet. Email address is there where you can connect with me in reference to it. If you are local and you want to attend, it is free. We're not asking anybody for anything. If you want to donate, that is up to you. We do welcome donations because it does take time, energy, and effort to put these events together, but we do it because this is what the Lord has asked us to do. So thank you very much. Again, find me, Amania, on The Conservative Poet and City Talk Podcast.
All right.
All right.
Bye, y'all.
Bye. Thanks again.
Love
See you next time. Oh, don't forget to like, share, comment. We always forget that. Like, share, comment, and share the content. And when you see our shorts, we're going to have little clips of these. Share it. Take a 60-second look and share it with somebody else. That way we get more eyes on the work that we're doing here. Okay? Thanks for chopping it up with us.